That night the air had a strange weight. It wasn't the same wind that usually rustled through the trees, nor the same silence that slept in the streets. Something stirred among the shadows, as if the sky were breathing differently, as if the universe itself were holding its breath, waiting for midnight. Many felt it, but few dared to speak of it, because there are things the soul perceives before the eyes see them, and that night, the soul of the world began to tremble. I felt it too. It wasn't fear, it was something else, a mixture of reverence and unease, a certainty that something sacred was about to manifest. And when I looked up, there it was, the moon. But not the moon we all know. It was an open wound in the sky, a circle of fire suspended over humanity, a blood moon that seemed to watch us with sorrow. In that instant, I understood that she, the mother, the one who weeps for us, was trying to say something, not with words, but with the silent language of heaven. They say signs always come before big changes, but this time it wasn't just any sign, because at midnight on November 17th, that red light wouldn't just be an astronomical spectacle, it would be a divine warning, a final call. A warning wrapped in beauty, so that even the hardest hearts would understand that the time for indifference was ending. Hours before it all began, an elderly woman from the small town of Medjugorje claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary. She described her dressed in white, her face wet with tears that fell like crystals. In her hands, she held a mantle stained with red. "It is not my blood," Mary said. "It is the blood of the earth, crying out for mercy." No one believed her at first, but as the sun set and the horizon began to turn that deep color that precedes only the greatest mysteries, those who had scoffed began to feel a knot in their chests. Something was changing. The atmosphere grew thick. Animals were restless, and house lights flickered as if an invisible presence pierced them. On the radio, some stations went off the air without explanation, and although everything seemed normal on the surface, a supernatural silence descended. It wasn't an absence of sound, but a cosmic pause, as if the heavens were awaiting a response from humanity. In that silence, Maria spoke again, not in an audible voice, but within those who still knew how to listen with their souls. "My children," whispered that inner voice, "when the sky turns to blood, do not fear. It is not the end, but the beginning of the return to love. But before dawn, the world must behold its reflection and weep." That phrase hung in the air like both a promise and a warning. Many began to weep without knowing why, not out of fear, but because something within them remembered. It remembered a forgotten truth, an ancient covenant with the Creator, a promise that lay dormant beneath centuries of noise. And all the while, the clock slowly approached midnight. The streets were empty. The wind blew with a whistling sound that seemed to call out names. And above the rooftops, the moon's red glow illuminated the faces of the few who dared to look. In those eyes there was fear, yes, but also a spark of hope. Because even amidst the foreboding, Mary's light did not come to destroy, it came to purify. Some claim to have seen her silhouette reflected on the lunar disk. Others say they heard a distant song, soft as a prayer, piercing the clouds. Whatever the case, everyone felt the same thing. Something was descending, a maternal presence, immense, so real that the air seemed to vibrate with compassion. Children awoke crying. The elderly knelt without understanding why. And in every corner of the planet, a single feeling united them, regret. But what no one knew was that this wasn't just a spiritual calling. It was the beginning of a phenomenon that would transform history. Because at midnight, when the clock struck exactly 12, something would break the veil between the visible and the invisible. The blood moon would become a mirror, and what was hidden would be revealed. And now, as you read these words, I want you to breathe and listen. Not to the sounds around you, but to the echo within. because what is to come will not be seen on the news or announced on social media. It will happen in silence, in the soul. And when the clock strikes 12, only those who have felt the call will truly know what it means to see the sky weep. Her name was Lucia. She was barely 18, but her eyes held the depth of someone who has seen too much. She lived in a small town, surrounded by mountains and silence, where the night seemed endless and time moved slowly, as if the whole world were waiting for something that would never come. Her grandmother had taught her to pray since she was a child, but as the years passed, Lucia had stopped, not out of rebellion, but because she felt that the heavens had stopped listening. However, that night something woke her at precisely 11:53. I didn't know why. She simply opened her eyes and the room was flooded with red light. At first he thought it was a fire, but when he approached the window, he saw it. The sky, to the moon. A radiance so profound it seemed to bleed onto the earth. Everything was bathed in a reddish hue that didn't frighten, it mesmerized. It was as if the universe had lit a divine lamp to reveal the invisible. And in the midst of that vision, Lucia heard something that didn't come from outside. It was a voice speaking to her from within her heart. "Lucia." The voice was soft, sweet, but filled with infinite sadness. "Who are you?" he whispered. There was silence, a second that seemed eternal, and then that voice answered, "I am the one who intercedes for you when you forget to pray. I am the one who loves you when you don't know how to love yourself. I am the mother who never left you alone." Lucia fell to her knees. She didn't understand. She didn't know if she was dreaming or if madness had taken hold of her. But when she looked out the window again, she saw something impossible. The reflection of a woman of light standing on the hill opposite her house. She wasn't touching the ground, she was floating, enveloped in a white cloak that shone even under the red moon. "Maria," he murmured, his voice breaking. And then the figure spoke again, without moving its lips, directly into his soul. "Tonight, my daughter, heaven is watching. Humanity has forgotten to listen, has forgotten to feel, has forgotten to weep. But there is still hope. You will witness the sign, not so that you may fear, but so that you may remember. For what is about to happen is not punishment, but purification." Lucia felt the air disappear. Her whole body trembled, but not from fear. It was a vibration that enveloped her from within, as if the purest love in existence were touching her. Suddenly, time seemed to stop. The sound of the wind, the crickets, the trees, everything stopped. The entire world was suspended between the last second of the day and the first of the revelation. And then the Virgin extended her hand. In it shone a sphere of golden light that pulsed slowly, like a heart. "Each beat of this light," she said, "is a soul seeking to return. But there are millions who no longer know how. When the moon reaches its highest point at midnight, the whole earth will see its reflection, and the reflection will be the human soul. The fire will not come from the sky, but from within those who have forgotten how to love." Tears began to stream down Lucia's face. She wanted to speak, but no voice came out. She could only watch. Maria approached slowly until her presence filled the entire horizon. The young woman felt a warmth in her chest, a love so immense it hurt. "Mother, why me?" he managed to say. "Because your heart still listens, my daughter, and only those who listen will be able to guide others when the time for silence arrives." The clock struck 11:59. The air grew thick, heavy, as if an electric current were descending from the sky. Lucia looked up one last time. The blood moon began to slowly rotate, emitting a pulsating, rhythmic glow, almost as if it were breathing. In that instant, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. And then, the Virgin's voice said something that chilled Lucia's blood, and at the same time brought her peace. "This is the last moon before the change. After this midnight, nothing will ever be the same. But do not fear. The darkness that will come will not be eternal. For in the middle of the night, The light that the world had forgotten will be born. The young woman felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Everything turned white. There was no sound, no time, no space. Only a feeling of absolute peace. When she opened her eyes, she was kneeling on her bedroom floor, holding her grandmother's rosary. Outside, the moon was still red, but the silence was complete. And then, the first miracle happened. Tears began to flow from the eyes of the image of the Virgin Mary on her small table. They weren't tears of water. They were tiny drops of light, which fell to the floor and vanished like stars upon touching the wood. Lucia stepped back, trembling. The air smelled of incense, and a soft melody like a distant choir filtered through the atmosphere. It didn't come from anywhere. It was heaven singing. Outside, the dogs knelt. Yes, knelt as if recognizing something sacred. And in the nearby villages, hundreds of people awoke at the same time, saying they had felt a maternal presence, warm, enveloping. Some saw lights crossing the sky. Others heard a voice calling their name. Everywhere, a single word echoed in the air. "Come back." Meanwhile, Lucia remained silent. She knew that something else must be happening because the Virgin had not finished speaking. "Tonight," the voice whispered, "the earth will bear witness to the reflection of the human soul. What you will see will not be punishment, but a mirror. Every heart will be shown to itself. Some will weep with shame, others with love, but all will know at last how far they have strayed from the light." The clock struck midnight. The moon stopped moving. And then it changed shape. It was no longer round. Its surface began to ripple, displaying fleeting images as if it were a liquid mirror. Lucia saw shadows, faces, scenes of the world. She saw mothers embracing their children, men kneeling in solitude, entire cities bathed in a golden light that rose from the sky. But she also saw darkness, fire, tears. And amidst all that, an immense figure emerged from the lunar glow, the face of Mary, weeping. She wasn't crying from sadness, but from compassion. Her tears fell to the earth like threads of light, and each tear touched a soul, awakening it. It was the purest act of love ever seen. In that instant, the whole world stopped. There were no wars, no hatred, no fear, only silence, a silence full of presence. Lucia understood then that she was witnessing the beginning of something that would change history. It was no ordinary apparition. It was the fulfillment of a prophecy that had lain dormant for centuries. The blood moon had become the mirror of the world's soul, and Maria wept not for the end, but for the new beginning. Lucia fell to the ground, crying too, but this time with gratitude. She knew she wasn't alone. The love was real. Heaven was real. And though the world trembled at dawn, the message had been delivered. Before disappearing, the Virgin left one last phrase, written in the air, made of light. Lucia watched it slowly form, like a flame that doesn't burn. The heavens have spoken. Humanity has one last chance. When the sun rises again, those who listen will know what to do. The vision faded. The sky regained its calm. But something had changed forever. Lucia, clutching the rosary in her fingers, felt the deepest calling of her life. And although she didn't understand everything she had seen, she knew she had to tell. Not for fame or fear, but for love. Because what was coming wasn't destruction. It was a rebirth. However, the message had a second, hidden part, which would only be revealed when the moon disappeared and dawn touched the earth. And that second part still lay dormant in the young woman's heart, awaiting its appointed hour. As dawn began to brush the horizon, something shifted in the air. It wasn't the familiar scent of dew nor the usual birdsong. It was a palpable silence, as if the entire world awaited a second heartbeat. The clouds seemed suspended, motionless, and the wind seemed unsure of its direction. No one knew it yet, but that day would be remembered as the day humanity glimpsed the soul of the planet. Lucia was still on the ground, her hands clasped together, her rosary soaked with tears. She hadn't slept, nor could she. Outside, the blood moon was still visible, even though the sun was beginning to rise. An impossible phenomenon. Two lights in the sky, day and night coexisting, blood and dawn blended on a single canvas. The young woman felt a chill run down her spine. The air seemed to sing, and then he heard it. A distant murmur, like thousands of voices praying at the same time. It didn't come from any particular direction. It came from all of them, from the mountains, from the rivers, from the sea, from the trees. It was as if creation itself were praying. Lucia left the house. The town was awake. No one spoke. Some were crying, others simply stared at the sky, unsure what to do. The sun was rising, but instead of illuminating, it seemed to reveal. The colors were different. Every leaf, every stone, every face had an intensity they had never possessed before. The world looked alive, naked, sacred. In the cities, people stopped their cars. Traffic lights stopped working. Phone screens went black. Clocks showed the same time, exactly 12, even though it was morning. The same second frozen for everyone. No one understood why, but everyone felt it. Something bigger was happening. In Rome, church bells began to ring on their own. In Jerusalem, monks awoke weeping for no apparent reason. In Mexico, farmers kneeling before the dawn claimed to see luminous figures walking across the fields. In the Philippines, fishermen asserted that the sea had changed color, reflecting the same red light as the moon, even though the sun shone brightly upon them. And in every corner of the planet, the air smelled the same, of incense and salt. Lucia, gazing towards the horizon, heard the voice inside her again. "Daughter, the heavens have opened. What man sowed, the heavens now reveal. But do not fear. This day is not one of punishment, but of revelation. Those who mourn will be comforted, and those who seek will find." At that moment, the ground trembled slightly, not like an earthquake, but like a pulse rising from the earth. The trees bowed gently in one direction, as if in greeting. The animals began to behave strangely. Dogs sat gazing at the sky, birds circled above the cities, and cows mooed toward the horizon, as if responding to an inaudible melody. It was nature praying. The phenomenon lasted only a few minutes, but for many, it felt like an eternity. In every heart, something broke and something ignited. People who hadn't prayed in decades fell to their knees without understanding why. Parents hugged their children. Siblings forgave each other. And for the first time in a long time, the world felt what it was like to be united, not out of fear, but through a shared trembling of the soul. At 12:17, the news programs interrupted their programming. The signal was the same on all channels, in all languages, a live broadcast from the sky. There were no cameras, there were no drones. Nobody knew where the image came from. It was as if the sky itself had become a living screen. In it, the blood moon could be seen, still suspended over the world, even though it was already broad daylight. But something had changed. Luminous symbols appeared on its surface. They were not letters, nor signs, nor human drawings. They were forms that seemed to breathe, that moved rhythmically, as if they were made of fire and water at the same time. And in the center, little by little, a figure emerged. It wasn't Mary's face. It wasn't human. It was a light so pure that it blinded anyone who looked directly at it. A presence, a heartbeat, then a voice, the same in every place on the planet, spoke. It didn't come from the sky or the earth or from the machines. It came from within. This is the time that was announced. Love has been forgotten but not destroyed. Today the sky calls, not to condemn, but to awaken. Come back, humanity, return to the heart. Millions wept, millions screamed, millions stood motionless, hands on their chests, feeling something inside them ignite. Some fell to their knees in the streets, others hugged strangers. In hospitals, terminally ill patients began to inexplicably recover. In prisons, inmates wept and begged for forgiveness. On battlefields, soldiers laid down their weapons. For 1 hour, the whole world stopped, and for the first time in centuries, there was peace. Lucia watched everything from her hill. All around her, people knelt, weeping. But she knew that something was still missing. The message was not over. And when the clock struck 1 in the afternoon, the moon began to slowly fade away. The red turned into white, the white into gold, and the gold into a transparency so pure that it revealed the invisible, a radiance that did not belong to this world. The sky opened. It was not a metaphor, era literal, as if an invisible veil had been torn, and behind him another light could be seen, infinite, alive, pulsating, a presence that needed no name, the very center of love. Lucia fell to the ground, crying weakly. The air was filled with perfume. The sky seemed to breathe, and the voice spoke again. "My daughter, tell them not to fear, that this is the beginning of the return, that what man destroyed with hatred will be healed with tears, that there will be no punishment, but cleansing. But they must awaken, because what comes after the moon will be the hour of decision." Lucia's tears mingled with the earth. Looking around, he saw small flowers beginning to sprout among the stones, as if the ground itself were responding to the words of the sky. The miracle wasn't in the heavens, it was on earth. In the following hours, the phenomena continued. The sea became completely calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror. The mountains shone with a golden hue at sunset, and at night, where there had been darkness before, soft flashes began to appear, as if thousands of giant fireflies were dancing in the air. Scientists couldn't explain it. The politicians remained silent. For the first time, religions agreed on a single phrase: "Heaven has spoken." Meanwhile, Lucia began to write down what she had seen, guided by a force that was not her own. Her hands moved on their own, quickly, without stopping. He wrote phrases that he didn't fully understand, but that emanated an ancient, almost eternal wisdom. Among them all, one was repeated like a heartbeat: "Midnight will return," and with it, the judgment of love. When he finished, he looked at the paper and put it in a small chest. She knew that message wasn't for her, but for the world. But I also knew that something more was still missing. Because Mary's love had not been fully manifested, there was a third sign, one that would come with the setting of the sun, one that would divide the day into 2 stories, before and after November 17th. That night, the villagers lit candles, not as a ritual, but as a response. Each flame was a prayer, and each prayer a thread that bound heaven and earth. Lucia felt that Maria was near again, and before falling asleep, she heard his voice, sweeter than ever. "Thank you for believing when the world doubted, but they have not yet seen the final light. Prepare yourselves, for when the silence returns, I will speak once more, and this time it will be forever." Lucia closed her eyes. The wind came in through the window, carrying the scent of incense and the echo of millions of repentant hearts. The world slept peacefully, unaware that upon waking, the third sign would already be in the sky. The early morning of November 18th dawned with an unreal calm. There was no wind, the trees seemed made of glass, and the birds that usually sang on the rooftops were motionless, perched silently, as if awaiting a divine command. On the horizon, the sun remained white, so pure that it could not be looked at directly. No one understood what was happening, but in everyone's heart reigned the same feeling. Something else was about to happen. It wasn't the end, it was the prelude to something immense. Lucia woke up with a shudder. She had dreamed of a great light descending upon the oceans, and in the midst of that light she heard a song that said, "Everything will be revealed, everything will be purified." When she opened her eyes, she noticed that the walls of her room glowed softly. as if they were breathing. The air smelled of freshly baked bread and flowers. On the table, her grandmother's rosary still emitted a gentle glow, and a drop of light remained suspended above it, floating without touching the surface. Lucia felt no fear. She knew that heaven had not yet finished its message. In the distance, a murmur began to ripple through the streets. People emerged from their homes, gazing at the sky. Some raised their arms, others knelt. On the radios, an unknown frequency filtered through the stations, transmitting a sound many described as a sigh from the sea. News broadcasts around the world showed the same image, a line of light crossing the oceans, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, as if a luminous wound was splitting the planet in two. It wasn't an explosion or a meteorological phenomenon. It was something alive. On satellites, scientists detected an energy pulse that didn't originate from outer space, but from within the Earth. It was as if the planet had awakened. Each pulse coincided with a sudden increase in the heart rate of millions of people, recorded by smartwatches and medical monitors. But far from causing fear, that pulse brought serenity. Many claimed to feel, during those moments, an inner voice saying, "I am here." Lucia went out into the countryside. The mountains, shrouded in mist, seemed to ignite from within. A golden glow emanated from the stones, and the air vibrated with an inaudible music. It was the same tone she had heard in her dream, a lullaby, a mother's song. Suddenly, the sky darkened briefly, as if someone had turned off the world's lamp. People screamed, some ran, others simply closed their eyes. But Lucia remained standing, motionless, gazing upward. She knew that what was coming was not darkness, but revelation. And then it happened. A beam of light descended slowly from the sky, but it was no ordinary beam. It was a living, translucent column formed by thousands of luminous particles swirling in a spiral. It touched the ground gently, without destroying anything, and expanded like an invisible wave. The instant the light touched the earth, time stood still once more. Lucia's heart was beating strongly, and in the middle of that column, a figure began to form. It was her, the Virgin. She wasn't walking. She floated on the light, enveloped in a white cloak that reflected shades of gold and blue. Her face shone with an indescribable tenderness. There were no tears this time, only a serene smile that held centuries of compassion. In her hands, she carried a sphere that pulsed like a heart. When he spoke, his voice was not a sound. It was a vibration that pierced through skin, bones, and soul. My children, the time has come when love is revealed without veils. The moon spoke in the night, the sun showed its purity at dawn, and now the earth itself responds. All that was hidden will be revealed. Do not fear, for the judgment that is coming is not of fire, but of light. The light will show what every heart hides. Those who love will be lifted up. Those who hate will be embraced until they remember what it is to love. The crowd, without understanding how, could hear her. In every language, in every mind, her voice was clear, maternal, firm. This is the final sign. There will be no destruction but transformation, for my son does not desire the end, but rebirth. And rebirth begins when humanity remembers who it is, the image of eternal love. As he spoke, the sky filled with flashes of light. They weren't stars, they were tiny lights descending, millions of them, floating like golden snow. Each particle touched a person, a tree, an animal, and vanished, leaving behind a warm sensation in the chest. It was as if each soul received a divine spark. Lucia felt her body lighten. She could see through the light. She could hear the earth's heartbeat. And then she understood. The miracle wasn't a spectacle. It was an inner calling. At that moment, he saw thousands of people kneeling in different parts of the world. A fisherman in Peru, a girl in Nigeria, an old woman in Russia, a man in New York. All of them speaking different languages, yet all crying the same. All of them reconnecting with the sacred, Maria raised the sphere she was holding. From it sprang a line of light that stretched across the sky, uniting the moon, the sun, and the earth into a single point of energy. The sky changed color. The red of blood transformed into a deep gold, then into blue, then into pure white. And on that blank space, a symbol appeared that no one would ever forget. A heart surrounded by thorns, but not bleeding, in bloom. Each thorn turned into a petal, every wound in light. "This is the sign of the new age," Mary said. "The world has been washed in tears. The tears you have shed were not in vain. Pain has reminded you of tenderness, and tenderness will lead you to peace. But listen carefully. Silence will return one last time before dawn on the third day. In that silence, the Father will speak, and when he does, you will know that the kingdom has begun in your hearts." Lucia collapsed to the ground, exhausted, not from weakness, but from the immense weight of the love she felt. The air filled with perfumes, roses, incense, bread, rain, all mingled in an aroma that was almost visible. The light began to slowly dissipate, and Maria's figure vanished into the mist. But before disappearing, he extended his hand and with a slight gesture wrote something in the air. "I will remain where there is faith. Don't look to heaven, look to the soul." And then the column of light dissolved, and the world began to move again. Time turned back. The clocks moved forward, but everything was different. The children who were born that day did so without crying. The animals were calm. The waters of the sea had a bluish hue that reflected the light of the sky even at night. News reports from around the world spoke of the same phenomenon: spontaneous healings, reconciliations, and the disappearance of violence in war zones. Weapons seemed to refuse to fire, and crowds sang without rehearsal. The world had changed, and although many scientists tried to explain it as a solar coincidence or an electromagnetic phenomenon, no one could deny what millions saw. The sky had opened, and a voice had spoken. Lucia, exhausted, returned home as evening fell. The world was calm. On her table, the rosary was still there, but now it shone with a constant light, as if a star had decided to stay. She sat down in front of it and began to write again. This time, not isolated words, but a complete, clear, direct message that flowed from his soul with the fluidity of water. The earth has been marked by love. There will be no punishment, but there will be a choice. Each soul must decide whether it wishes to remain in the light or return to the shadows. Love is not imposed, it is offered. The door is open, but each heart must cross it of its own free will. November 17th was the call. The 18th, the response, and the 19th will be the decision. Lucia put down her pen, took a deep breath, and cried. Not from fear, but from gratitude. The Virgin had shown him the greatest of mysteries. Love does not conquer with force, but with tenderness. And as night fell, he realized that the miracle was not over, because the last part of the message had not yet been revealed to the world. Maria had said that she would speak again in silence. And that silence, that divine pause that heaven would use to say the unspeakable, was about to arrive. The world, now calmer, began to feel it. The first day was filled with tears, the second one of gratitude. The third would be a revelation. When the clock struck exactly midnight on November 19th, a supernatural stillness descended upon the earth. No sound, no movement. And then, from the heart of the planet, a new voice, deep, immense, unmistakable, uttered the first words of God's silence. That night was unlike any other. The sky did not roar, the wind did not blow, the sea did not churn. It was as if the entire universe had decided to hold its breath. At the exact moment of midnight on November 19th, the whole earth was immersed in a calm that did not belong to this world. The cities fell silent, the clocks stopped ticking, hearts beat in unison, slow and deep, like a sacred drum resonating in the depths of the soul. No one understood what was happening. Some thought it was the end, others a miracle. But everyone, without exception, felt it, a presence that filled everything, a stillness so intense it couldn't be natural. It wasn't the absence of sound, it was a wordless voice, a communication that didn't pass through the ears, but through the heart. It was the silence of God. Lucia woke up just as it began. The clock struck 12, but the second hand wasn't moving. The room was bathed in a soft, pale light, as if the air had a soul. As she sat up, she noticed her breathing became slow and heavy, and that each inhale brought with it a peace impossible to describe. She opened the window. The world was still. The trees didn't sway, the river water was still, not a single insect buzzed. And yet, everything was alive. It was as if the Creator had placed his hand upon the planet and said, "Be quiet. I want to speak to you." And he spoke, not with human words, but with the language that only the soul understands. Each person heard something different, but at the same time the same. Those who had lived with guilt heard forgiveness. Those who had lived in fear felt comforted. Those who had closed their hearts perceived an unknown, sweet, infinite warmth. Lucia heard her own name, not from an external voice, but from within. Lucia. And that single word filled her with tears. "I'm here," he replied in a whisper, though he knew his voice could not break that stillness. The air vibrated as if it were smiling, and then, within her, the divine voice continued, "You have seen the sign. You have felt the call. You have believed without seeing. Now look at what was always within you." Suddenly, before his eyes, the world changed. The walls disappeared, the ceiling vanished. He was no longer in his room. He was in the middle of an infinite expanse of golden light with no ground or horizon. There was no sun or moon, yet everything shone. Time did not exist there. Every thought was an echo, every emotion a form. And in the midst of that immensity, a presence was approaching. Lucia fell to her knees without fear, with her heart open. He didn't need to ask who she was. The soul recognizes its origin without anyone telling it. God had no human form. He had no face. He was an ocean of light, a vibration that enveloped and permeated everything. And yet, Lucia felt that he was looking at her. "Why are you crying?" asked that voiceless presence. "Because I don't deserve to be here," she replied between sobs. "Because I have doubted, I have failed, I have been afraid." And the divine voice answered with unfathomable tenderness, "If only the perfect listened to me, the world would be empty." Lucia covered her face with her hands, and as she did, she saw something. Scenes from her life, small, forgotten moments. The time she helped an old woman without asking for anything in return. The laughter she brought to her brother when they were children. The silences in which she cried unseen. Each instant appeared as a fragment of love that had never faded. "This is what I see," God said. "Love that survives your mistakes." Suddenly, the light surrounding her expanded, and Lucia could see beyond herself. Millions of lights floated in the same space. Human souls, each with its own tone, its own color, its own vibration. Some were intense, others faint, but all shone. And among them, a figure walked slowly, wearing a white and blue cloak. It was Maria. She wasn't crying this time. She was smiling. Her face radiated serenity. When he passed by Lucia, he stroked her cheek, and his touch was not warmth, but a memory, that of being loved from before she was born. "He hears you all," she said gently, "but silence is the only way you can hear him." At that moment, the souls began to sing, not with voices, but with light. Each color was a note, each note a sigh, each sigh a plea. It was a living symphony, the song of the universe returning to its source. And as everything vibrated, the silence became tangible love. Lucia understood that this was not a punishment, but a reconciliation. Each human being was being shown to their own soul, seeing themselves without masks, without pride, without fear. Some wept, others laughed, others fell to their knees, but none were alone. God's silence did not accuse, it healed. It was a mirror that didn't judge, but embraced. In the hospitals, the dying opened their eyes for the last time, smiling. In the prisons, the inmates looked at each other and began to pray together. On the battlefields, soldiers from opposing sides embraced without words. The whole world was enveloped by an invisible current of compassion. There were no borders, no languages, no flags, only humanity, only children looking to the Father. Lucia watched as a gigantic wave of light swept across the planet, touching mountains, seas, and deserts. Wherever it passed, the air grew clearer. Animals approached humans without fear, and plants bloomed in seconds. The earth was being purified. And as that was happening, a new understanding ignited in her heart. God's silence was not a pause. It was the answer. Because in silence, the soul remembers that it was created from the same material as love. Then God spoke again, and this time Lucia felt that the message was for everyone. I gave you signs in the sky so that you would look up. But my desire is not that you fear, but that you awaken. The fire, the moon, the light, all were to remind you of what has always been within you. I have not come to end the world, but to begin it anew. And as those words echoed, the golden light began to move, slowly spinning on its axis, forming a spiral that absorbed the remaining shadows. Every fear, every guilt, every hatred was drawn to the center and transformed into a brilliant spark. Lucia cried not from sadness, but because she understood. The final judgment that everyone was talking about was not a condemnation, it was a rebirth. God did not separate the good from the bad. God gathered them all together to remind them that they had never ceased to be His. The silence lasted as long as a heartbeat, or an eternity. No one knew. But when the vibration began to subside, the world slowly awoke. The cities regained their lights, the clocks moved forward, the wind began to blow again. But nothing was the same anymore. The sounds were cleaner, the colors more vibrant, the gestures gentler. Humanity had been touched by the silence, and although the words returned, everyone knew that something inside them had changed forever. Lucia opened her eyes again in her room. Dawn was streaming through the window, but the light had a different tone, warmer, more human. He sat up slowly, feeling the ground vibrate like a heart beneath his feet. The rosary continued to shine, but now each bead had a different color. When he took it in his hands, he heard one last phrase within his soul. What began in heaven must continue on earth. That's when he understood the purpose of it all. The miracle had not been the blood moon, nor the light, nor the visions. The miracle was the inner change that now burned in millions of souls. Mary's true message was not to announce the end, but to remind us of the beginning. Lucia went out into the street. The world was silent, but not empty. People walked slowly, some hugging each other, others simply looking into each other's eyes, as if recognizing each other for the first time. No one shouted, no one ran. On the walls, on the stones, on the trees, small patches of light began to appear, figures that many claimed to see moving as if they were breathing. Some said they were angels, others that it was the Holy Spirit itself. Whatever it was, they all felt it. Something divine had remained among them. In the sky, the sun shone whiter than ever, and beside it, still visible, a faint crimson arc recalled the night of the blood moon. It was the seal of the pact, the promise fulfilled. Lucia closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. I knew that the silence would return one day, because love does not speak with words, but with presence. And when that day comes, the world will not fear it. Because this time, the silence wouldn't be a warning. It would be communion. The world had awakened to a calm unseen since the earliest days of creation. It was as if the air had learned to pray, as if the mountains breathed in time with humankind, as if all life had been reconciled with its origin. The streets, the fields, the coasts, everything was enveloped in a soft, almost liquid light that seemed to emanate from the ground. And yet beneath that peace, something was beginning to stir, not with violence, but with a deep, rhythmic cadence, like an ancient heartbeat emerging from the center of the world. Lucia was the first to feel it. She was walking through the valley when the ground beneath her feet vibrated slightly. It wasn't a tremor, it was a pulse. Each vibration carried a note, as if the planet were singing a melody only the soul could understand. She closed her eyes, knelt, and placed her hands on the earth. What she felt took her breath away. The ground had a voice, a low, deep, feminine voice, a voice that wasn't heard, but was felt. "It is not over yet, my child," said that voice. The sky spoke, the silence answered, but the earth also has something to say. Lucia opened her eyes. Around her, the grass trembled gently. A green glow rose from the ground, as if nature itself were illuminated from within. On the horizon, the trees seemed to lean toward one another, forming an arc of light. The stones of the path gleamed, marking an invisible trail that led toward the mountains. Without understanding why, Lucia began to walk. Her feet didn't stumble. Her steps seemed guided by a force that knew the way before she did. The air was filled with murmurs, as if thousands of invisible voices were praying together the same prayer. "Let the earth speak. Let the earth speak." As he moved forward, the sky began to change. The clouds parted in spirals, revealing a white light that descended in gentle columns upon different points of the planet. In each place where the light touched the earth, something sprouted. Flowers that grew in seconds, fountains of crystal clear water, trees that bore fruit instantly. It was not an isolated miracle. It was the response of all creation. The love of heaven had awakened the soul of earth. Lucia reached a cave at the foot of the mountain. Its entrance was surrounded by shimmering stones. Inside, the air was fresh and vibrant, filled with a scent reminiscent of rain and incense. She entered without fear. Inside, there was no darkness. Everything shone with a golden light that came from no visible source. In the center of the cave, on a smooth rock, there was an engraved symbol. It was the same heart with thorns turned into flowers that she had seen in the sky days before. Upon touching it, a current of heat coursed through his body, and then he heard it clearly. "This is the echo of my word," the voice said. "What was sown in heaven must sprout on earth. My message was not written on paper or stone, but in the memory of the world. Everything that was created has life, and that life now remembers its purpose." Lucia began to cry. "I don't understand, Mother. What should I do?" And the answer came, soft as a sigh. "Listen to the ground, my daughter. Every place you touch will remember. Every word you speak will ignite dormant memory. Do not announce fear, announce awakening. For what is coming is not darkness, but revelation." And the light inside the cave grew until it enveloped her completely. In that radiance, Lucia saw images, mountains opening like books, seas calming, cities covered by a golden mist, people kneeling on the ground, crying, laughing, asking for forgiveness. And among all those visions, one figure emerged once again, Mary with her mantle spread out, covering the entire planet. "My tears fell to the ground," she said, "and the earth kept them. Now those tears will be springs. Every drop that fell in sorrow will blossom into mercy. But remember, not everyone will listen. Some will continue to sleep, and their sleep will bring confusion. Therefore, those who have seen must hold the light." The vision faded, and Lucia woke up lying on the stone. A spiraling glow pulsed on her chest. It was the sign that the message had been planted within her. As she left the cave, she noticed the air had changed again. The pulse of the ground was stronger, more alive. And as she looked up at the sky, she saw something that left her speechless. A blue-green glow, like a new dawn that did not come from the sun. That glow began to spread around the world. In the deserts, the sand crystallized, forming luminous geometric figures. In the glaciers, the ice took on fiery hues. In the jungles, the trees emitted a soft light, and the animals came out of their burrows to look up. The scientists, baffled, called it the Earth's pulse phenomenon. But the souls who had felt the silence knew the truth. It was the echo of the divine message resonating in the heart of the planet. For 3 days, that pulse repeated itself every midnight, getting stronger all the time. It's becoming increasingly clear. And every time the earth beat, millions of people dreamed the same thing. An infinite field, a spring in the center, and a voice saying, "Drink, for this is the water of remembrance." The Virgin's tears had become invisible rivers that flowed beneath the surface of the world. Lucia began to write again, but this time she couldn't do it alone. Every word she wrote seemed to resonate in the stones, in the mountains, in the trees. It was as if nature were responding to her pen. The message grew, spreading like a luminous root beneath the continents. And in the depths of the earth, an ancient sound awoke, the song of the beginning, the sound with which God had created the universe. One night, while resting by the river, Lucia felt the water change direction. It flowed eastward toward the sunrise, and with the river's movement, a melody emerged. They weren't human words, but their meaning was clear. The time of symbols is over. Now will come the time of understanding. The echo became global. From volcanoes to oceans, from valleys to cities, the entire planet began to vibrate with the same note. And those who had opened their hearts after the silence understood that it was the voice of Mother Earth repeating Mary's last words. Love has taken root. Heaven, earth, and humanity were finally connected. It was complete communion. The Creator, creation, and the children breathing the same breath. Lucia then understood the ultimate mystery. The message had not been for a select few, but for everyone. The miracle had not descended to be contemplated, but to be lived. The kingdom of God was not a distant place. It was the heartbeat of the earth when human hearts chose to love. In those days, thousands of people began to hear the pulse of the earth. Many recorded it, unaware that they were capturing the sound of a sacred echo. Others simply closed their eyes and wept. And a phrase began to be repeated among the people, like a slogan born from the soul. Don't look to the sky, look to the ground. Therein lies the promise. Lucia, deeply moved, returned to her village. The children followed her, the elders blessed her. They no longer called her the miracle girl, but the one who remembers. And every time someone touched her, she felt a spark of peace. Because the message he had received was not his. It was the world's era.